Every single video that I've uploaded to my channel currently has been of my own personal wisdom, knowledge, or experience that I've gained from doing tons of 40k research and playing a bunch of 40k games. But in this video I want to do something a bit different. I want to give you somebody else's knowledge and a very, very valuable lesson I was taught by a player who I expected to not give me any information at all, and it absolutely blew me away what he ended up teaching me. You see, basically I went down to my local game store around a couple of days ago, and I wanted to watch a bunch of games unfold so I could get as much knowledge and experience as possible, basically just deliver back to you guys in the form of content. But I watched this one game, and luckily I was there from the start to the finish, so I had the full game unfold. And it was a Chaos Space Marine versus Genestealer Cult matchup, and I was super interested because you see Chaos Space Marines are just amazing, fantastic army as a whole. Dark Pact is overpowered, and they just work really well, especially with their chosen units. But the Genestealer Cult could still do really well with their resurrect ability. It allows them to deep strike back in, return to strategic reserve when they die. It can be played very interesting, and I wanted to see how it could unfold if the player knew what he was doing. So I watched the full thing, like I said, and oh man, I learned some very valuable experience. You see, when I was watching this game unfold, the Chaos Space Marine player was playing such a different way. He was basically predicting the enemy's movement and forcing the enemy to move in a way that would benefit him, but completely declined the chances of winning for the Genestealer Cult player. And he ended up winning in the end with like a 20, 30, I think it was maybe even 40-point lead. And I was just blown away. I was like, how did you do that? How did you predict his movement and force him to move in a way that you wanted that would benefit you but not him? And he simply gave me this one answer. He told me, oh, I use a strategy called herding. And so I asked him, what is herding? And he proceeded to give me this long, amazingly valuable information speech of what exactly the strategy is and how he gets his players to move in a specific way that benefits him but not the enemy. And I asked him, can I make a video on this? And he said, go for it. He thought this information was so important and he wanted to get it out with people who might not know it. And he said, go for it. Make a video as long as you possibly can and make sure you give everything I told you. So that's exactly what I'm doing here. And I'm basically going to be teaching you what the heck herding is and how you can herd in Warhammer 40k. So I don't waste any more of your time, and I'm going to jump straight into it with what this bloody awesome Chaos Space Marine player taught me during this game. Now, what the Chaos Space Marine player taught me that I think many people do not know about Warhammer 40k, that if you were to understand, would skyrocket your potential of winning in really any in Warhammer franchise. Age of Sigmar, 40k, Kill Team, anything, is going to be this one simple phrase that he said to me word to word, and that is, you need to learn to force your opponent to make mistakes, and then be able to capitalize as best you can off the mistakes the opponent makes. Now, you see, mistakes don't necessarily come naturally. It's very hard to see players just randomly throwing out a mistake here and there, especially when you get to the more competitive scene where everyone knows each other's armies very well and plans specifically for the most common playstyle they see in those armies. So seeing a random wrong stratagem, or maybe seeing a random incorrect movement or a weird way they've placed a unit to be able to charge is very, very rare to see basically a mistake come naturally. So we need to learn to force the opponent to make mistakes. But how exactly do we do this? As if the opponent's going to understand what we're going to do, they can't make a mistake. And this is where the idea of herding comes in. And it's going to be this. It's going to be forcing the opponent to make mistakes through threats. That's right, not immediate action, not immediate attacking, not immediate shooting, not even immediate charging. But it's going to be the idea of pre-planned threats. And this can be done in a couple of ways. This can be done through potential crazy damage units. This can be done through potential high OC units. Or it can be done through horribly broken stratagems, enhancements, or unit abilities that would hugely threaten the enemy's potential at winning. You see, having a threat is not guaranteeing your movement. It's simply setting up a potential that would be really devastating for the enemy. So the enemy is going to move in a position that's going to allow them to basically counter that threat, but in which you've pre-planned to force a mistake for that enemy or make the wrong move when they're trying to do that. And this can be done, like I said, through high damage, high OC, dangerous stratagems or enhancements, or a crazy wacky army ability. And this is the most probably amazing lesson that the Chaos Space Marine player taught me, and that's what herding is. It's forcing your opponent to make mistakes through units that could potentially do something but will not do it, or be able to counter what the enemy's going to try and do to, like I said, counteract your amazing stats. So let's get into a perfect example of explaining this, because I've gone on all about this and it can be very confusing, especially for new players, to wrap their head around the kind of herding idea. So let's jump straight into it with some live examples to help you understand it a bit better. Now, what are some perfect examples of herding already seen in armies right now? And I'll give you one really good one, and that's going to be my Orcs list sponge line. I actually told just the Chaos Space Marine player, and he told me that this already implemented the herding strategy really, really well. And if you think about it, it really does. All the characters that I have, or all the units I have, like Mozrog, Warboss and Mega Armor with 4 Mega Knobs, and Deathkiller Wartrike with 6 Warbikers, all are a super tanky unit, but all pose a threat enough for the enemy to want to shoot them. Mozrog, insane damage, and is going to deal a lot of potential like threats and deaths and wound reductions to monsters and vehicles with these anti-vehicle and monster 4-up, and the extra damage against monsters and vehicles. Warboss and Mega Armor and the Mega Knobs are going to get that devastating wounds, and along with the Ugg Chopper that has hitting on 2s is going to get the 12 strength, it's going to be 13 strength considering in the War, and it's doing a flat 2 damage. It's going to be a very strong, very good War threat to have to go up against with any unit is placed in front of. And the Deathkiller Wartrike is a heavy OC unit, along with all the Warbikers having a 2 OC, so they're going to hold down objective really well. Now you see, all of these units have a threat. Mozrog killing, Mega Knobs War threat, and Deathkiller Wartrike is an OC threat. So the enemy is going to want to shoot them, but all of them are super duper tanky. So the enemy's going to have to spend a lot of time shooting them, whether that be the entire shooting phase, maybe with Mozrog, or enough shooting to battle shock them or need to remove them from a table like Warbikers or Mega Knobs. But that's going to involve so much shooting. So the enemy's wasted so much firepower, they have nothing left to shoot my kill line with, in terms allowing me to move up, and them having to waste maybe even a stratagem on Overwatch, or maybe a stratagem on like extra damage or -1 to hit, whatever they may have. So I've forced them in a situation where they've spent so much of their effort shooting, which is what the first, second, and third battle round really rely on, and am now able to move my army up so much. So I've forced the enemy to make a mistake they didn't want to make with a kill line that's benefiting me and not them. So this is a perfect example of herding, is making some kind of tanky unit line that's going to pose enough threat the enemy's going to want to shoot, but still in turn be able to tank the shots, or pretty much just tank the shots, or like find some way to like decay the damage and deal with it in the best way possible. Another one is going to be implementing movement-based stratagems and enhancements. This is a pain to deal with. Think about Phantasm. No one likes Phantasm except for the Eldar player. It's annoying, they get to move pretty much whenever they want, and it's a pain. Or the Tower movement stratagem allows them to move after they shoot, or the Mist of Demos. No one likes any of those because it's forcing them into a situation they are feeling comfortable with. For example, if there's a CP or they want better line of sight, it's very easy to get that for those armies. So using and implementing these are very powerful. Whether this be for wasting an Overwatch, for example, if you're moving and the enemy needs to shoot you, they can Overwatch you, maybe to kill you or to try to remove you. So if you have a super tanky unit, or a unit's going to be able to decay the damage, it's going to be very easy at removing the chances of Overwatch, because you can only Overwatch once. So suddenly you force the enemy to waste a CP and make a mistake. Now your army is so open to no more Overwatch threats for that entire battle round. Or, for example, if you're playing like Eldar and they shoot you with the unit that you're using Phantasm with, but with the Phoenix Gems, you can come back with the character. So suddenly they've wasted a whole thing on you, and you still hold the OC, or you've still scored the stratagem, or you've still done whatever you need to do, and you've now resurrected that character, which is just fantastic. And they've basically wasted an OC, which now you have the whole battle round to deal with no OC. Or Mist of Demos. If the enemy's charging you, they've made a mistake thinking, oh, I need to charge them, but they've forgotten about Mist of Demos. So you force them into like maybe a big Terminator brick or a Paladin brick where they feel like they need to charge them because they're going to lock them in combat. You Mist of Demos out of there, rapid egress back in. So you force the enemy to make a mistake in a way that makes them feel uncomfortable but benefits you in the same way. These are perfect examples. Another one is going to be hard to fight abilities or painfully broken kind of like abilities. Let's be honest, there are plenty of broken abilities in the game that 40k GW is playing not to fix anytime anytime soon. So you can use these really well to maybe pose a potential threat to your enemy to force the enemy to want to shoot them. One is going to be the Incarn. Okay, come on, no one likes the Incarn. The Incarn is painful, just like Phantasm. The only person who likes the Incarn is going to be the Eldar player. So the Incarn, with his ability to like teleport wherever unit dies, is going to be super beneficial to you, obviously not the enemy because Incarn sucks, I'm just saying, and it's going to be a great way to position yourself in a way that's going to be able to benefit from the dying. So suddenly you can shoot a specific unit or make the mistake of your enemy shooting a unit that they may think would work for the Incarn, but little do they know the Incarn can do other things that would work in that situation very well, which is super annoying to deal with. Or maybe the Incarn is really, really tough, which, come on, he is, and the enemy wants to shoot him because they don't want to have to deal with that death, but then you tank a lot of the shots, wasting it on the rest of the wasting it on the Incarn, allowing for the rest of your army to move up and get into shooting and be the glass cannons that they're so good at being. And the next one is going to be CSM's just Dark Patch ability. No one likes the Dark Patch ability, except for the Chaos Space Marine player in the end of the day. So using this ability maybe with some scary units, like the Forge Fiends, or some large bricks of Chosen, or like a Rhino threat maybe, is going to be super helpful. For example, my opponent, or Chaos Space Marine player, did this with his Rhinos and his Chosen. He moved them up, and it was going to be a super scary unit to have to deal with because he's going to put lethal hits on, and the Gene Stealer Cult player didn't want to have to deal with that, so he wanted to shoot the Rhinos. But little did he know, he made the mistake as another Chosen unit was basically moving onto IOC and scoring cleanse. So he forced the opponent to make a mistake based on a unit that was tough instead of the unit that would be the most smartest to shoot, which was a really good idea and a great way of using herding. The last one's going to be indirect. Once again, no one likes indirect except for Imperial Guard and Night Spinners. And so example, if you're playing with Night Spinners or you're playing with the Imperial Guard's artillery shells, you can position yourself really well. You can force the enemy to have to move up because after all, it's indirect. You can just hide behind cover. So forcing the enemy into a way it's going to be allowed them to have line of sight with you is great because if you put them in a certain position, you can force the enemy to either have to move up or, like I said, line of position, which is going to allow you to charge them, shoot them, overwatch them, or whatever you need to do to deal damage to them in the end result, or get them off an OC even if that's what you need to do. So you can make them move up, especially with like the 108 or 3 like range that the artillery battery shells have for Imperial Guard, or like the Night Spinners just having that really annoying or having that stupidly good indirect. It's just an annoying thing to deal with. So you can force the enemy to kind of move alongside of you with that, which is going to open you up to so many potentials to score OC or kill the enemy in the long run. And all these are perfect examples of herding. Basically, you're forcing the enemy to make mistakes through threats. You're forcing the enemy to move because indirect is going to be painful. You're forcing the enemy to move because Chaos Space Marine's Dark Patch threat with the Chosen are going to be painful. You're forcing the enemy to move because the Mozarog War threat and the Meganob's War threat is going to be deadly. So they're going to want to shoot them to get rid of them, but little do they know that wasn't your true intent. Your true intent was basically to force the opponent into making a mistake that benefits you, but not them. And that basically is herding wrapped up. It's forcing your opponent to make a mistake that they don't want to have to deal with in the long run, but you're going to benefit so much from. Basically similar to the Chaos Space Marine player, got to score cleanse and hold the OC objective, while the Neophyte hybrids were shooting into the Rhino. Now, there are some examples where herding is not required, and I'm going to go over that in the next slide. But yes, basically, like I just want to say, herding can be confusing. So let's go over what exactly herding is not and how you can avoid the mistakes that many people make when trying to herd and then failing completely. Now I'm going to explain to you what herding is not, because many people can get this confused and throw out units thinking they're doing a really good job, when in fact they're doing an absolute horrible job. Let's go over it. The first one's going to be a unit that you want to be tanky for a herding purpose, but is not going to be able to have that focused fire effect. Now you see, if you're throwing a unit out there that's going to be really good at attacking, that's got like lethal hits, sustain hits, it's going to be able to -1 to hit roll, or it's going to have a reroll wound rolls effect, or something like that, you got to understand it's going to have what I call focus fire, which means it's going to be focused down by a lot of firepower and has to be willing to resist that. So if a unit is not going to be able to make it, then I wouldn't put it out there. If it's going to die, that's not herding, that's just being stupid. The next one is going to be units that might have other purposes. So if a unit is meant to score, or it's meant to not die, its whole purpose is to pretty much just like never die the whole round. It needs to stay alive. Not the fact it's going to like keep resurrecting, it just needs to not be able to die the whole round. Then putting it in focus fire isn't exactly the best idea. Or putting it in a purpose that's going to make the enemy shoot or have a line of sight to it so it can do an extra maybe an ability to it or just general damage to it is not a very good idea. So make sure your purpose and the army's purpose aligns with the factor of the herding like strategy. And a unit might not pose enough threat. If a unit only has 1 OC and you've got 5 chosen and you're throwing them out there thinking, oh, look at me go, when in fact it's got a freaking Neuro Tyrant and a bunch of other Termagants and you've got like 12 OC on that point, yeah, it's not exactly the best strategy. You have to understand if your threat is actually purposeful enough for the enemy to want to shoot you. It needs to be a really strong factor, like a lot of damage, a lot of OC, or a crazy powerful stratagem. If the stratagem is just -1 to hit, that's not insane. That's just a little bit good. You have to be going Phantasm, Mr. Demos level. So you need to be getting in that, like, kind of getting in that point of like understanding what is threatful and what is not. And another one is going to be counteracting your army's purpose. Remember, an army's specific rule. If you've got all these like toughness like debuffs, so you've got like a -1 to maybe toughness, or you've got a bunch of things that up the save, or you've got a bunch of like add 1 to the wound roll, add like 2 to the hit roll, or something like that, and you're going up against Death Guard, that's just going to bring them down to regular army levels. You have to understand what you're going up against and what's going to actually affect them in the long run. But yeah, that's going to be hurting in a long run. I really, really liked what this Chaos Space Marine player taught me, and I think it's going to do really well to the players who are going to choose to play it. But yeah, like I said, that's going to be with me today, and hope to catch you in the next one.